We're turning our attention back to tennis. I'm delighted to say Conor Niland is with us to reflect on Novak Djokovic's ascendancy to the throne as the greatest ever. Even I can't deny this anymore, Conor. His record is unimpeachable, and he's not finished at all.
No, he's not. He's got another few left in him. Good morning. I was listening to you lads talk about Jonathan Liu there. He wrote a great article in The Guardian a couple of days ago about the win as well. As you say, ascending to the throne and in Nadal's house. You know, it was obviously Djokovic versus Casper Ruud, but it was Djokovic versus Nadal in terms of the slam numbers, and to do it on Chatrier at the French, where Nadal's been so dominant, was sort of ironic and I'm sure pretty sweet for Djokovic.
His story is so long that I had forgotten significant aspects of it, which I was only reminded of recently watching the Boris Becker documentary. So after Becker retires, there's a period where he becomes a coach, where he's actually in Djokovic's box for a couple of seasons, and it's quite important. You've forgotten that there was a flakiness in Djokovic. Andy Murray would beat him and could outlast him, and it was in the mix who would win between Murray and Djokovic on clay. Obviously that's a testimony to how great a player Andy Murray was, but it does seem as if there were staging posts along the way that have been important in terms of turning him into the psychological power that he is.
That's it. Like, he was pulling out of matches a lot, and it's interesting when you think of kind of what happened with Alcaraz. Like, Alcaraz was nearly the story of the tournament up until that 1-love in the third set against Djokovic, when he started cramping kind of out of nowhere. He was incredible. He has been incredible the last few months, and was dismantled Tsitsipas in a way that I haven't really seen a player like Alcaraz, I feel like, in a long time. But as you say, his body is letting him down a little bit at that early stage in his career, and we saw it a lot with Djokovic, sort of between the ages of say 18 and 21, 22 even. So hopefully Alcaraz can sort of settle down into that period and maybe start to get a bit of momentum and maybe take a little bit of a run at some of these records. He's got a long way to go though. But yeah, Djokovic had Becker on board for a couple of years. I feel like Becker actually helped him a lot with his serve. He was known as an unbelievable returner, ground stroker, mover, but I think he brought his serve on quite a bit, and it's now a weapon, has been for about 5 or 6 years. So the full package, and I think he always found Roland Garros the hardest to win. Obviously Nadal was a huge component to that, but like, he's now got the Aussie this year and the French. He's always had a nice kind of a run at Wimbledon and the US Open. He sort of liked that 2 or 3 months, and it didn't take that much out of him physically, as I said, with the way the Alcaraz match finished, and obviously the Ruud match was relatively straightforward. So I would have thought pressure off now. He's got that number, the 23, and he's got to, maybe have a tilt for the calendar slam just to top it off. Wouldn't put it past him.
That's the thing, Conor, isn't it? Like, and that's the scary thing for his opponents, is that calendar Grand Slam gives him extra motivation. Like, it's the third time I think he's ever won those first 2 tournaments or Grand Slams of the year. He really, really wants to achieve that.
Yeah, I'd say he'd love it as just an exclamation point. Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a kind of a relaxing having won that and then kind of gotten that box ticked, I suppose, of the 23. I think he's going to push on. That's just the type of competitor he's been. Body wise, he looks pretty good. As I say, there was no, like, he was duffed up a couple of times by Nadal. He looked like a kind of a bruised and battered guy after the French Open the last few years, but this one he's come out kind of gleaming, as I say, sitting on his throne, and has a nice lead in now for 3 weeks to Wimbledon, and he'll be ready to go.
Seems to have come out the other side of all the controversies and the vaccine stuff almost with a siege mentality. Like, has that just almost propelled Djokovic into this level, considering he's 36, and people would say, he should be tapering off at this stage, but it's nearly given him a new lease of life in some weird ways.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think he's probably settled in his own head that he isn't going to be loved, and he is a little bit of he is a divisive figure, and he's got the Serbian sort of fans that come out in force that I think know that as well, and are there to sort of back him up in any fight, any dog fight he's in any stadium. So yes, like, if you think about Australia, where we were 2022, and him not being able to play, he's in He's in a confinement hotel. He's had the match at the US Open the year before where he's been disqualified. He's still a couple of slams away from getting to where Nadal's going to get to. So to think he's turned it around and is sitting pretty at 23 with Federer obviously out of the picture. Nadal, it sounds like he'll hopefully get out to some of the bigger tournaments next year, but it sounds like he possibly won't be a force, and no one else is anywhere close. So he's kind of playing with house money now for the next, but you'd have to think at least 18 months he's going to be an absolute not a favourite necessarily with Alcaraz around, but certainly one of the top 2 or 3 at every slam. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if Alcaraz can sort of improve, if he's going to be a bit of a blocker for Djokovic to maybe get to the mid-20s or even high 20s, scary as that sounds.
Where is Djokovic in that GOAT conversation for you with Federer and Nadal? Like, does it solely come down to numbers and him being ahead of the two of them on Grand Slams now, or is it more nuanced than that maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like how the whole GOAT debate has been pretty reductive to just Grand Slams. Like, I know Bjorn Borg was complaining a few years ago. I remember that, he used to go and kill himself to win the Italian Open because it was a massive event, and then turn around and win the French and Wimbledon. That was an incredible achievement, and nobody necessarily went down to Australia. Whereas that's changed, and Djokovic has won, what is it, 10 Australians, give or take. So that is a big, I suppose, change in terms of how the debate's been framed. It's just Grand Slam numbers. But I think any way you look at it, I saw a graphic the other day where he's got, I think, the most weeks at ATP number 1, most Masters Series titles. He's won, I think, the most year-end number 1s, I think, is 7. I think Sampras was 6. So, he's out there. It's very, very hard to look past.
It is very hard to look past at this stage. I mean, I'd love to make the case for Federer or Nadal. Both Federer and Nadal had periods where they looked like they were coming to the end. Like, you kind of see it, especially with Federer. The injuries began to take a toll. With Djokovic, that hasn't been the case. The only thing that has prevented him from playing has been disqualification for hitting the ball boy with the ball, or because he refused to take vaccines. Like, there has been no sense of physical decline at all, has there?
No, I mean, he sort of had this issue in Australia, and it looked like after, I think it was the 3rd round, was it his hamstring, and he sort of hobbled over the line, and he looked like he was really minding himself for a match or two, but managed to get through it just because of his level, and then thanked his team, his physio, at the end of the 2 weeks, saying that they had done an unbelievable amount of work behind the scenes to get him right. So there has been a couple of kind of niggles that have come through, but there was nothing at all during the French. I think he'll inevitably get something, but I agree, there isn't. You felt like with Federer, even he looked a little bit older, whereas Djokovic he looks the same as he did 10 years ago. The way he moves, there's been no compromise in his game, I guess is probably the way to describe it. He's playing the same game that he did when he was 25. He's not trying to shorten points or try to be a bit more aggressive or do anything differently. So yeah, it's amazing. But like, it's funny, the lead up to this tournament, like, he lost, I think it was the 2nd round of quarterfinals of an ATP 250 in Bosnia to Dusan Lajovic. So he's dipping in and out. You don't see him between the slams a whole lot. So he's doing what Federer did for a few years, where he was just really peaking for the slams. So that's obviously what he's going to be doing over the next couple of years. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where he ends up. But it's probably not going to be at 23 where he is right now.
We've been talking in the aftermath of Serena finishing about the women's game and who needs to step up. It does appear as if Świątek is the one who's bubbled up. I mean, obviously there's still room for Coco Gauff, and we really hope that Emma Raducanu solves all of the various myriad of issues that she has to try and push on and give everybody something to look forward to. But is Świątek on the verge of being like absolutely dominant, or is she just a little bit ahead of everybody at the moment, and as a result winning these titles and picking them up because there is nobody totally dominant?
Yeah, I would say she's more than a little bit. I would say she's there's definitely a gap between her and the rest of the field. I think what's helped her though is Ash Barty retiring, and Naomi Osaka both out of the picture now. Both sort of choosing, as opposed to walk away from tennis and that. I suppose, I always find that amazing that Barty walked away at 25, and Osaka sort of chose not to try and become one of the greats, because they both had the potential to do it. So that has opened up a bit of a pathway for Świątek, and she's really focused. It seems like it's her number one thing in her life, which is obviously what's required. It's just whether she can put it together now for 5, 6, 7 years or 10 plus years like Serena. I think that seems to be the difficult thing for players these days, for whatever reason. It seems like on the ladies' side, they're finding it difficult to go and put 15, 16 year careers together. It seems like they burn right for 4 or 5 years and get a little bit tired or disillusioned or distracted or something, and they're not able to put these incredible kind of careers together like we saw with going back to say the Navratilova, Everett sort of days all the way through to Serena.
I was reaching a point there, Conor, I was thinking, the peak age of tennis, we spoke to Jenny Claffey about this last week as well, the peak age was getting more and more, like what is a record 11 Grand Slams in his 30s for Djokovic, but then you see the likes of Świątek at 22 and Alcaraz at 20, and you wonder, like, which way is it headed? Is it a bit of both? Like, you kind of feel with sports science developing the way it is, players will be able to play a little bit longer, but then you see players at the peak of their powers potentially in Świątek and Alcaraz, so it's hard to know which way it's headed.
Yeah, I mean, I read something during the week about Djokovic that he's in that sweet spot of having all that incredible experience and not having a real fade physically. And as I say, I think that fade comes quite quickly, from maybe 36, 37 to 40. But right now he's in a good place where he's got, some of the stats you see that roll around during these tournaments in terms of how many, say, Grand Slam semi-finals he's played, and if you think he's won 23, how many Slam semi-finals, how many times he's been in that situation. So I think that helps massively. It was interesting watching the start of the final against Ruud. Djokovic got off to a really slow start. It's almost like he's so comfortable and relaxed in those situations. Sometimes he finds it difficult to know exactly which gear to start in, and he can be, because I think he's so used to it knowing he's got this 3-4 hour window to win the match, and sort of so confident in some ways that he can be quite slow, and he almost played with fire a little bit against Ruud and was down 4-1, so sometimes it can work against him. But it's I don't know why, say, the guys are seem to be able to put together these careers and seem to have that hunger and ability to keep going well into their 30s, whereas the ladies are a little bit more focused on winning slams in their early 20s, and then kind of mid to late 20s are a little less, seem to be a little less engaged.
Attitude seems to be so important as well, kind of like when you look at the likes of those younger players. I was reading a story during the week of Iga Świątek when she was 18, 4 years ago, making a bet with her sports psychologist, that she couldn't go through one training session without any drama, and she was just in this period where she was consistently having issues at training sessions. Alcaraz as well now all of a sudden is a player that just plays with a smile on his face, as does Świątek at this stage. So it's clearly something that the younger players have taken on board, that you need to enjoy the sport and not have the tantrums that lead to, I guess, the sport becoming a negative part of your life.
Yeah, I love Alcaraz's attitude. If you look at Nadal, Federer, these guys, they kind of all don't bring a lot of baggage with them, which I think helps. And if you look at Holger Rune, who's another talent who I really, I think has a massive upside and is winning Masters Series now at, say, 19 years of age, which sort of would suggest he's tracking towards being a Grand Slam champion over the next 2 or 3 years. He does have a little bit of drama that he brings, which I think it never helps ultimately. There's so much going on and there's so many fights to fight in tennis that bringing your own, creating your own sometimes can overcomplicate things, and it's a waste of energy. So controlling So it's your own mental state is absolutely key. And Świątek's one of the few players who travels with a sports psychologist, which is interesting. I think she's a really close friend as well, and it seems to have really helped her sort of make that transition from being, say, winner of Junior Wimbledon, breakout winner of the French 3-4 years ago, and now starting to pull together a collection of Grand Slam titles. So she's navigated that really, really well. I always find it interesting. Świątek often says in her interviews, I'm from little old Poland, we don't have a huge history of tennis. But then I'm like, well, Radwanska made final of Wimbledon in 2012, and Jerzy Janowicz made semis of Wimbledon in 2014. But she certainly plays the role of somebody who's sort of just trying to figure all this out, and perhaps is sort of trying to dampen expectations a little bit when she says that.
Naomi Osaka says she will come back after she has her baby, and she wants her kids to see her play tennis at a high level. So hopefully that's the inspiration that drives a rivalry, because the women's game needs a bit of the rivalry to replace what Serena obviously brought with the box office.
Tennis needs rivalries. It's its lifeblood for whatever reason. You have to have it. So going back to McEnroe Borg and all the way through the Agassi Sampras, the Becker Edbergs, and obviously we had an incredible run with the 3/4 guys, including Murray. So the women's game has suffered massively, I think, in the last decade from a lack of that. I think Serena's star power and I suppose her uniqueness in terms of how good she was carried the WTA through kind of a rocky period, and now we're in a bit of a period where I think we need a few more names, a few more rivalries. I think Raducanu would have been poised. I think that would have been absolutely fantastic for her to say, take up a position in the top 3 to 5 in the world and be competing, but it just looks like that is not happening for her, and I'd be concerned that she is not going to be able to consolidate a position in the top 10 with the injury trouble she's had, and I don't know, she's just not putting it together.
All right, Conor, we'll leave it there for now. Good stuff, thanks a million, great to have you with us.
Cheers, guys.
It's Conor Niland.